Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim.
Sunny Hostin recently had a really tough moment on TV, and no, it wasn't because of Mercury being in retrograde. Greg Gutfeld called her out in a way that caused quite a stir. Even her teleprompter seemed to glitch. It turned into a dramatic moment that had people glued to their screens. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when someone loses their cool on live TV, this was it. This was a clash that felt surprising to some, but pretty expected to anyone who's watched The View for a while. What really surprised people, though, was what Sunny said once the cameras stopped rolling.
The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
Sunny Hostin hit her breaking point, and not just the usual kind of stress we sometimes see on The View when discussions get tense. No, this was a full-on emotional reaction, clear and visible to everyone watching in high definition. And it all happened thanks to Greg Gutfeld, who pointed out a number of inconsistencies in her past statements. In just a couple of minutes, he managed to highlight more contradictions than many have noticed from the show in years.
So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big Bounty towels you don't want to carry.
Those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip.
It all started like any other Tuesday episode of The View, full of high energy, confident opinions, and supportive comments from the hosts. They often feel like they're helping protect democracy with their conversations, even if the facts don't always align. Sunny, who is often introduced as the show's legal expert, gave her usual take, making strong claims, often blaming others and speaking with passion, even if the details weren't fully backed by facts.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took it.
For those who haven't seen The View, it can sometimes feel like watching a group chat come to life, with everyone bringing loud opinions and confidence. Sunny usually takes the role of the rational one, though her version of reason often involves loudly calling something a threat to democracy whenever someone has a different opinion than hers. That strong reaction has become a regular part of how she shares her views.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
And Greg Gutfeld entered the conversation, and things took a sharp turn. Greg isn't known for being overly polite. He's more like that guest at a dinner who says what others are thinking, but are too nervous to say out loud. It seems Sunny wasn't ready for someone to use sarcasm and straightforward talk. Greg pointed out examples where Sunny had called for respectful discussion, yet had recently criticized millions of Americans with very strong language. He showed how her version of civil discourse only applies when people agree with her completely. He highlighted this double standard with clear examples, showing how Sunny's logic often mixed courtroom-style arguments with emotional, dramatic language more fit for high school debates.
I'm gonna milk this till the end of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? Do you think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay.
Greg kept going, calmly and clearly pointing out where Sunny's reactions changed based on political sides. When conservatives did something, she reacted strongly. But when those on her side did the same thing, suddenly the issue became complicated or misunderstood. He showed how she criticized family separation at the border under one administration, but then excused it under another. He pointed out that she often calls out ethical concerns over small things, while defending people who have serious ethical issues. The crowd didn't take his side, though. They stayed loyal to Sunny. Even if Greg had shown a list of her contradictions signed by Sunny herself, they likely still would have booed him. Sunny responded the only way many TV personalities do, by playing the victim. Her voice shook, her eyes teared up, and she turned the criticism into a bigger issue, saying it was an attack on women, minorities, and anyone else who might relate. When arguments don't work, expanding the topic to emotions is often the next move.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Yeah. Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing.
Sunny, who has spent years on air criticizing large groups of Americans, was now emotional because someone questioned her record. The situation quickly turned into a display of emotional defense, with her co-hosts rallying around her as if facts had suddenly become threatening. Whoopi Goldberg even jumped in with a pep talk, suggesting that truth is flexible if you feel strongly enough about something. Producers behind the scenes were reportedly worried about Sunny's emotional state, even though public criticism is common for anyone in the spotlight. One might think she'd be used to it by now, but this moment clearly felt different to her.
Joy Behar gets racism. After all, she's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brian Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast. So Scott had to deal with Sunny Hostin and her typical self-righteous.
Greg Gutfeld didn't say anything outrageous. He simply pointed out clear contradictions. Yet that was enough to cause a major reaction. Social media exploded with memes and commentary. One popular post showed Sunny with the caption, "Strong opinions, weak backbone." Another joked, "When you realize receipts don't lie." Even people who usually stay out of political arguments noticed the moment. Many viewers are tired of seeing the same kinds of emotional reactions on TV without real accountability. Greg's segment was shared widely because he expressed what many were thinking, that The View has become more about emotional groupthink than open discussion.
But unlike this chick, we didn't think it was the best thing that could have happened to us. Although it did get Joy Behar to wear a mask. You make me sick. It's funny, her being named Joy is like me being named ugly.
In the days that followed, The View tried to reshape the story. Suddenly, it wasn't about Sunny's contradictions. It was about standing up against bullying and protecting women from public attacks. Simply pointing out inconsistencies was being framed as hate. The truth is, The View often functions as a safe space for ideas that rarely face real challenges. The hosts aren't always looking for a real debate. Instead, the show feels like a daily boost of self-confidence mixed with political talk. And when someone like Greg brings in facts or a different style, the response is emotional, not logical.
Did you watch the whole thing or just the parts that I sent you?
I watched it. Obviously, just the parts that you said. Did I watch a whole episode of The View?
No woman can do that unless you're stupid. But
I have a job.
Here's the thing. How can they call themselves progressives when they keep saying that nothing has progressed? Then it's on them.
Right. I just wish I could have, would have watched if I could, would have been Joy Behar watching that.
Yes.
And being like, I totally made the right call. It was not an accident that they had him there on her day off.
Yes.
When she was, presented herself as the, expert on systemic racism.
After the event, Sunny gave a heartfelt speech about growth and bravery. It felt like a public way to say, yes, I was caught being inconsistent, but this is part of my journey. Some people saw this as a thoughtful moment, while others felt it was just a way to shift focus away from the real issue. The View used the moment to turn what was a difficult conversation into a learning opportunity about emotions and self-reflection. Greg, on the other hand, kept his cool and didn't seem bothered by the backlash. He knows how these situations play out. When you challenge someone too strongly, it's no longer about the facts. It becomes about how they feel about being challenged.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses, regardless of skin color. People marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. Because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist.
This whole moment became a perfect example of what happens when public figures rely too much on emotional responses instead of consistency. Some hoped The View would use the experience to open up to new voices or welcome honest disagreement. But realistically, the show is unlikely to change. It'll probably keep delivering comforting content that supports the same ideas. Sunny may continue giving speeches about honesty while avoiding the uncomfortable truths. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld will likely keep doing what he does, pointing out inconsistencies with humor and sarcasm, which some find annoying and others find refreshing.
And I thought Will Smith wouldn't let a black man finish. If her IQ was half as high as her smugness, she'd be Einstein. And later it got weird after Whoopi Goldberg asked a question and Sunny chimed in again.
If nothing else, Sunny's emotional reaction reminded people of something important. Hypocrisy eventually catches up with everyone. You can only keep saying one thing while doing another for so long before people notice. Her reaction wasn't just about politics. It was about what happens when someone who's used to being the critic suddenly becomes the one being questioned. This time, The View took a risk, and the result was a moment of public embarrassment.